50 years after the events of the final Harry Potter books, and Harry Potter is now headmaster of Hogwarts, ready to usher in a brand new generation of witches and wizards. My name's Radio Mike, and I love Harry Potter. In fact, I love Harry Potter so much that when I was a kid, I wrote an entire series of fan fiction books based on Hogwarts. This is book 1 in that series. Welcome to Harry Potter and the Boys.
Hello everyone and welcome to episode 2 of Harry Potter and the Boys, a fan fiction podcast by me, Radio Mike, Australia's only fan fiction Harry Potter podcast. Because last week I made the claim on the show, the first episode of the show, and thanks to everyone for listening into that, that we were the only fan fiction Harry Potter podcast, or I questioned whether we were. It has been brought to my attention by several listeners, and thank you for all of you for pointing this out, that we are in fact not, and I repeat, we are not the world's only Harry Potter fan fiction podcast. We are certainly not the first. I assume we will not be the last. However, I am adamant that we are the best, and we are certainly Australia's first. Again, I haven't fact-checked that, and it is quite possible that we are not the first Australian fanfiction Harry Potter podcast. If there is another one out there, let me know. But there's a chance we are, and that's great. For those of you who are new to the podcast, welcome. Bit interesting you've chosen chapter 2 as the first chapter to start on. Generally, when reading books, most of us start at chapter 1, but you are welcome to start whenever you want, but it is a story. This is a serial podcast. This is a podcast that you don't just pick and choose. You don't just cherry pick this podcast. You listen to the podcast in order. That's what you're supposed to do. So go back to chapter 1 if you haven't heard it already. And very shortly we will do a little bit of an Alohomora on chapter 2 of Harry Potter and the Boys. Again, if you are familiar with Harry Potter, you will know that is the unlocking spell. We're going to unlock chapter 2 of Harry Potter and the Boys, but a bit more context. Obviously, I am Radio Mike, a young writer and producer and podcaster, obviously, from Melbourne, Australia. And I've worked on several shows, including the Hamish and Andy Show, or Willosophy with Will Anderson, The Chaser Report, amongst others. And yeah, this is a little show where I read my Harry Potter fan fiction from when I was in year 7 at school. It is essentially a parody set 50 years after Harry Potter, 55 years after the last Harry Potter. Harry is now headmaster of Hogwarts. Hermione is the deputy headmaster. And there is a brand new generation of witches and wizards about to start at Hogwarts. It is a lot of fun. And as we delve deeper into the book, I think we'll find the comedy gets just better and better. It goes from strength to strength, and it's just a whole lot of fun. So I'm glad you've rejoined me. If you heard the first episode, remember you can watch these. You can watch the full video podcast on YouTube. Go to radio.mike, and there you can also watch the full version of my solo podcast, 20th Century Boy, which this podcast is actually a spin-off from. So clips and watch the full podcast there if you would like to not just listen to me read my Harry Potter fan fiction, but also watch me respond to it in real time. Watch my facial expressions, watch me laugh and respond live. You are welcome to do that over at the YouTube channel, or just listen, that's fine. And again, the best way to support this, and a few people did this during the week, the best way to support Harry Potter and the Boys, one is to just get the word out there. Tell your friends. If you think it's really funny, or if you really like it, tell your friends, but also leave a review on iTunes. Just rate it 5 stars, but preferably a written review. Danny left one this week. She said, "Who doesn't want to listen to Radio Mike recite his year 7 fan fiction? Hilarious. Always a good time, whether you're a fan of Potter or not. Worth a listen for some lighthearted entertainment." Great. And someone else left a review whose name I cannot It's not a real name. It starts with X. It's XELMC. Anyway, whatever. It says juvenile and hilarious. It is so funny to hear something written by a child be looked over by an adult. You can see some of Mike's humor shine through from his early writing, and it's just a wild ride of a story. So please leave a written review. That really helps sort of push this podcast up in the iTunes or the Apple charts or whatever, which would be cool. And just tell your friends, send it to your friends and say, hey, listen to this. It's really funny. That's all I ask of you. That's all I ask of you. One thing, just tell your friends and rate a review. Two things, actually. And thanks as well. During the week, we did get some email correspondence, and this show, I would love to have your email correspondence on this show. The email for this show is radiomikepod, pod at gmail.com. Amy wrote into the show this week. She says, hey, Radio Mike, very exciting that you've started the Harry Potter and the Boys podcast. The chapter readings at the end of 20th Century Boy were the main reason I was listening to it. And now it's going to be a lot easier to recommend it to friends instead of just saying, scroll to the end. It's really funny. Okay, fair enough. You're making it sound like you hate my other podcasts, but whatever. I remember from when this is a great one. I remember from when you were reading chapters in 20th Century Boy that there was a bit where one of the characters yelled something and the narration said, ejaculated Lockie. Just in case you get up to this and can't figure out why that would be written, I think that would be in book 6 or 7, Slughorn yells something and J.K. Rowling writes, ejaculated Slughorn. Apparently it means yelled / exclaimed, and I think we can understand why a year 7 boy would love putting that in the narration. I was going to put Harry Potter and the Boys Ejaculation as the title of this email, but I didn't want it to go to spam. Cheers, Amy. Thank you, Amy, for getting in touch, because this is a funny one. And this, if you don't know, I read the first 10 or so chapters of this on my other podcast, 20th Century Boy, in 2019, but I stopped doing that with the promise of making this spin-off podcast, which was very, very delayed and is finally out, obviously. But yeah, there is a point where one, like, you know how it's like, oh, hey, how are you? Said Dave. Oh, what are you doing today? Inquired Jim, right? But in one of the Harry Potter books, and Amy has said that it's in the 6th one, but I'm pretty sure Ron does it as well. J.K. Rowling uses the term ejaculated as a one of those terms, like, oh, how are you? Ejaculated Ron. And when I read that in year 7 or whatever, I was like, why is Ron ejaculating? Because I don't know about you guys, the listeners, but generally I associate ejaculation with semen coming out of a penis, semen being ejaculated out of a penis. That's what I consider ejaculation. So when J.K. Rowling writes that Ron ejaculated, I just find it very strange that Ron is like coming in his pants in front of all the other students at Hogwarts or in front of Harry. Seems very strange. Amy has obviously had the same feeling. But yes, ejaculated is also a term for something that is said, I suppose. And I use that a few times later in the book. So massive thank you to Amy. Please get in touch with the show. As I said, radiomikepod at gmail.com. Just leave a message there so I can read it out on the show. Anything, questions, any feedback, funny moments, things you found funny, things you want to know more about, anything, just send it through. And I also wanted to give some questions that you can answer each week as well to make it a little bit easier for you guys to contribute. I actually was a guest on another podcast this week to help promote this podcast. That podcast is called Paging Mr. Potter. Every week they read one page of Harry Potter. They've been doing it for 2 years, and they're up to page 94 of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Wow, that's dedication. Page 94. They just got to the Sorting Hat, and they've been reading it for 2 years, which is wow. And on that, where we were talking about the Sorting Hat, and I mentioned that I am in Ravenclaw. I consider myself a Ravenclaw. I think Ravenclaws are intelligent and resourceful. And yeah, I genuinely would consider myself a Ravenclaw. I might fit Slytherin because I think Slytherins also have like that, you know, sort of, I don't know, like still an intelligence, but more of a cunning and a wit and, you know, are good at sort of achieving what they want. I never really associated much with Gryffindor. Of course, in Harry, well, I won't spoil what house the Michael character ends up in Harry Potter and the Boys, because we will get to that eventually. And to be honest, and I've said this before, and it has proven controversial in the past, and I said this on the Paging Mr. Potter podcast as well. I personally think that Hufflepuff is the loser reject house. I think that anyone who is voluntarily saying they are in Hufflepuff should reassess themselves, because surely, please write in your house and justify why you think you're in there. That's the task for this week. Send an email, radiomikepod@gmail.com, and let me know what house you are in at Hogwarts. Are you in Gryffindor, Slytherin, Ravenclaw, or Hufflepuff? I'm Ravenclaw. Hufflepuff is the reject house. But if you are in Hufflepuff, I'd love to know why you want to be in Hufflepuff. Because Hufflepuff, like I said again, I said this on the Paging Mr. Potter podcast. I was once dating a girl who told me she was a Hufflepuff, and I started to have second thoughts almost instantly when she said that. Hufflepuff. Hufflepuff is literally the reject house of Harry Potter. Like, Gryffindor is for the brave, Ravenclaw is for the intelligent, Slytherin is for the cunning, Hufflepuff is literally, I think the Sorting Hat literally says everyone else goes to Hufflepuff. Like, Hufflepuff is when you don't have a really strong quality, you just get taken in by Hufflepuff. And I think that's really bad. And I think no one should want to be in Hufflepuff. So, radiomikepod@gmail.com. Let me know your house and any other feedback or funny moments you found from this episode, this chapter reading of Harry Potter and the Boys. Obviously, again, each week on this podcast, we will read a chapter of my fan fiction. Last week was chapter 1, and I'll just give a brief recap just so we're all sort of on the same page here. Whoops, that was an unintended pun. I'm just going to open the PDF file that contains Harry Potter and the Boys. I'm going to open that now. But last week, we were pretty much just introduced to our key characters, the boys. Essentially, we were given some context in the first chapter, which is called The Letters from Someone, which was obviously a parody. Well, maybe not obviously, but that was a parody of the second chapter in the first Harry Potter book, which is called The Letters from No One. This was called The Letters from Someone, which I actually think is quite witty as a 13-year-old boy to be doing doing a pun like that, to be doing a parody title like that. We met the six main boys: Michael, Rob, Lockie, Luke, Sam, and Tom. And we also met we were introduced briefly to another character, another boy, Derrick Derrickson, and all of these boys are about to start their year at Hogwarts. That is essentially what happened in this book. We got a little bit of foreboding moments describing Derrick, that he was an intelligent boy for the time being, and he was a pure blood wizard as well. And we also learned a fun new fact about Harry Potter. Not only is he the headmaster of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry now, but he is also the head of stupidity and the head of giving head, which I think was a standout moment from last week's episode, that Harry Potter is now the head of giving head at Hogwarts, which I just think is really funny that is a position that they have at Hogwarts now. All right. So that's sort of where we're at. We are about to start the second chapter of Harry Potter and the Boys, my Harry Potter fan fiction. It is called, conveniently enough, Chapter 2, the second chapter. So let us get into that now. So I guess starting right off, and as I read this, I unpack it, I respond to what I've written, and I will try and get guests moving forward that we can unpack this crazy book together. Chapter 2, the second chapter, really, I think, symbolizes what this book is moving forward, because there is a lot of meta comedy in this book, which I actually think is quite witty for a 13-year-old. I actually am quite proud of some of these jokes. Chapter 2, the second chapter, like, a lot of the time moving forward in this book, you will find that the characters are aware that they are in a book, that they are in a novel. The narrator of the book at times becomes a character. Like, the narrator is, not an objective narrator. Often the narrator gives their opinions and speaks to the reader, and sometimes the characters themselves refer to the reader and to the narrator, which I find really cool. So chapter 2, the second chapter. Derrick, said Derrick loudly. Derrick is obviously this new character who is intelligent at the moment, but he was described as a Ralph Wiggum style character, one of the stupid characters from The Simpsons. Derrick, said Derrick loudly. He loved saying his own name out loud. Okay, so already you're questioning this kid a lot when one of his hobbies is to say his name out loud. Like any I guess it's not that weird for a kid, but any adult you meet, like if I just walked around and I was like Mike, you'd think I was pretty weird. All right, a bit more context on Derrick. Derrick's parents were two of the most famous wizards of all time. They were called Jermaine Derrickson and Derrickson. So already it's unclear to me which one of those is the father and which one of the mother. The only Jermaine that I know is Jermaine Jackson, who I think is Michael Jackson's brother. Jermaine Derrickson, I guess in that case, would be the father, and Derrickson, I guess, is the mother, but then Derrickson certainly doesn't sound much like a female name. But then again, maybe it's quite possible that Derrick has two same-sex parents, which is totally fine. However, I doubt that 13-year-old Mike was that progressive in his thinking. So for the time being, until we are proven otherwise, let us say that Jermaine Derrickson is Derrick's father and Derrickson is Derrick's mother. Let's continue. They were closely related to the late Michael Derrickson. Okay, that's weird because now it seems like Jermaine Derrickson and then Michael Derrickson, and there's already a character called Michael, but then I also said that Michael Jackson had a brother called Jermaine Jackson, and I'm wondering if, for whatever reason, me in year 7 just was trying to allude to Michael Jackson here in some way, which just seems horribly out of place now. But I really don't know. That just seems like an odd fact to include, that they were closely related to a guy called Michael Derrickson. But anyway, all right. Now, Derricky boy, said Jermaine, it's time to go to Diagon Alley. I don't know. I'm just doing voices for the characters. That's Jermaine's voice. Now, Derricky boy. And also, they're two of the most famous wizards of all time, Jermaine Derrickson and Derrickson, but we are unaware as to why they are so famous or successful. There is no context to that whatsoever. Let us continue. All right, it's time to go to Diagon Alley. Derrick started screaming. He was afraid of basically everything, including the word alley. Okay, so it did say that he was an intelligent guy, an intelligent boy for now, but he so far does not seem intelligent at all. In fact, he seems really, really stupid so far. He's afraid of the word alley. Continuing on, he walked into the fireplace. They were traveling by flue powder. Okay. This is, harkening back to the start of the Chamber of Secrets book where they travel via flue powder. Everything checks out here. Diagon Alley, Derrick said clearly. And, well, yes, just like every else Derrick does. So that's a missed word there from Mike. It should say, I think it should say, just like everything else Derrick does, it went wrong. Dead wrong. Okay. Diagon Alley, he said clearly. And well, yes, just like everything else Derrick does, it went wrong. Dead wrong. Okay, so this is again very similar to what happens to Harry in Chamber of Secrets. However, I believe Harry missays Diagon Alley and says diagonally. That's why he ends up in Nocturne Alley. This specifically says that Derrick said Diagon Alley very clearly. It seems like he just seems to have bad luck. Derrick found himself in a scary place. Then in brackets it says, well, it was scary to him. Okay. It was very dark, comma, he saw a blanket. That's a sentence. It was very dark, comma, he saw a blanket. Every now and then, the blanket would light up, then go dark again. He wondered what this blanket was. So am I, actually. He decided to pick the blanket up. He walked over to it. Ah! He screamed as a white, ghostly spirit emerged from the blanket. Okay, we're getting a little bit of mystique and mystery here. This is the world building that J.K. Rowling was so famous for. Like, what is this white, ghostly spirit? What could it possibly be? Help! Oh, please, help, please, Derrick yelled. And then it goes on. But what Derrick didn't know was that he was an extremely strong wizard and was somehow able to save himself. Okay, just lots of big calls. Derrick's parents are some of the most famous wizards of all time. Why? Derrick is apparently an extremely strong wizard. Why? No context, just puts facts on you with no backing evidence. It just says this is a fact. Accept it. Somehow he was able to save himself. Don't ask how. He was just there about to be squished, and then he appeared in Diagon Alley. Wow, that is one of the worst plot points ever. So he at no point does it mention that the spirit even attacked him, but now it implies that the spirit was going to squish him or something was going to squish him, and then somehow he magics himself to Diagon Alley. With no explanation as to how that worked. In fact, the narrator goes as far as to say, don't ask how this happened. So I guess the narrator's saying to you, the reader, not to question this. Don't question this. This just happened. Accept it and move on. A man with blonde hair ran up to him. Well, we know in a lot of Harry Potter media that blonde hair generally implies a Malfoy. So I'm very, very curious to see who this blonde-haired man is, but it doesn't look like we find out. A man with blonde hair ran up to him. What happened to you, whoever you are? What happened to you, whoever you are? As if you would. That's not believable dialogue at all. No one would say that. Like if you saw someone struggling on the street, you wouldn't say what happened to you, whoever you are. You'd be like, hey, are you okay? But also, it doesn't sound like Derrick had any struggle. Like he just appeared in Diagon Alley. Like, how does this man with blonde hair know that he was in some kind of danger? Maybe he looks frazzled. We could give him that. What happened to you, whoever you are? He said. And then Derrick just says L, like the letter L. This is what it says in the book. L dot 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 P. LP, he mumbled. So Derrick is saying out loud, LP, Lily Potter, maybe? Maybe it was the ghost of Lily Potter, as in Harry's mum, but that seems highly unlikely. But then this is Harry Potter, anything can happen. Also, it's not Harry Potter, it's my fan fiction. I have no idea what LP is, but LP is also what they call albums, LPs, long plays. Maybe it's that. Who knows? LP, he mumbled. What was he saying? And what had happened to him? I guess that's the narrator just asking the reader, what was he saying and what had happened to him? It's like a tease at the end of a movie, at the end of like a TV show. Ooh, what will happen next time on Harry Potter and the Boys? Find out next week. What was he saying and what had happened to him? And then this is the last sentence of the chapter, so get ready for this. This is quite good. I really like this. So LP, he mumbled, what was he saying and what had happened to him? And then it goes, something strange was already starting to happen in this book, and it was only the second chapter. So again, not often does a book acknowledge the fact that it is a book, and not often does a book say, wow, it's only the second chapter of this book and something strange is already starting to go down here. Something strange is going on and we're going to find out what, but it's only the second chapter. Oh, wow. I love that. I love that the book, because I guess when you're reading this, you think, wow, something strange is going on here. But then just in case you didn't know, the book confirms it to you. The book confirms to you that something strange is starting to happen in this book. It's good. It's a tease. It's a tease forward. You want to keep reading because you want to find out what the something strange is. Well, that's a great chapter. We get a nice little introduction to Derrick as a character. He has a little bit of a journey to somewhere that is not specified through Floo powder. Very similar as well to Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, as we said. For those interested, this was a 2-page chapter, and the font that this book was written in is Times New Roman, size 24 font. So you probably get 2 paragraphs not even paragraphs, maybe 6 sentences on a page. So I guess when I say that this book is how many pages? 193 pages, but you've got to remember that it's size 24 times New Roman font. So not exactly really elaborate chapters. However, this is certainly one of the shorter chapters. The next one is looking a fair bit longer. But yeah, send an email. Let me know your thoughts. What do you think the strange thing that's happening is? What could it be? Send some theories. What do you think LP is? What are your theories for what LP could be? Let me know that as well. Next week, we will go on to chapter 3 of Harry Potter and the Boys. Harry Potter and the Boys chapter 3 is called One of Many Bad Times in Diagon Alley, which does imply that, this is the first of several bad situations in Diagon Alley. Who knows what's going to happen next week? I'm just trying to think if there are any other points of contention here or things, anything that you picked up. What do you think the blanket was? Who do you think the ghostly spirit was? Do you think it's linked to this LP thing? Who knows what's going to happen? We will find out. And if I do say so, something strange is already starting to happen in this book. And it's only the second chapter. All right. Thank you for joining me for another week of Harry Potter and the Boys, a fan fiction podcast by me, Radio Mike. You can also DM me on Instagram, radio.mike. Go and follow me there. I put some clips up of this podcast as well as my other podcasts. You can also go to the YouTube channel, as I said, and watch the full episodes, watch my reactions and everything like that. So go and give those a view. And please, as I said at the top of the show, share it with your friends. That would mean the world to me, just to get it out there and get more people seeing, hearing, and engaging with this show, because I think this is a very special book. And I know we're not the only Harry Potter fan fiction podcast in the world, whatever, but I do want to be the best Harry Potter fan fiction podcast in the world. So definitely share it around and leave that review if you can. If you're in the podcast app listening to this right now, it is super easy to just write a review. 5 stars. We do accept 4, 3 or under. Give it to another podcast. We don't want to hear about it. And finally, radiomike.com.au to check out all of my stuff. Go and do that. You can find out like a little bit more about me if you don't know much about me. Again, this podcast comes out every Wednesday. And that is pretty much it for another week of Harry Potter and the Boys. Thank you for tuning in. And expecto patronum to you, and Expelliarmus to all the people in your life that you love. My name has been Radio Mike, and Harry Potter and the Boys has been the inside of my mind. Catch you later. Thank you.